Hello and welcome. We are here tonight with the series Our People Speak. We have two guests on our show this evening. We're going to be speaking about spreading resilience, not germs, Alaska Native reflection on pandemics. This series is brought to you by Danakanaga, TCC, Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center with generous support from Doyon Limited. Viewers can see this program or donate to the Morris Thompson Center by navigating to their website. My name is Dewey Kochlia Hoffman. My parents are Dee Olin and David Hoffman. My family comes from the village of Ruby. I'm very proud and honored to be here with a couple of our Alaska Native elders who are generous to share their time with us, talking about a really tough topic, pandemics. We're living through the COVID-19 pandemic right now. A lot of our families are seeing disruptions in their work and school, and also in our communities with the loss of loved ones. This is not an easy time that we're living through. And yet, we know that as Indigenous people, we've gone through hardship. We can learn from our past, and we want to hear that history and what it can mean for us today and for our kids. So I'm very happy to welcome our two guests this evening. Would you like to start by introducing yourself, sir?
Yes, thank you. My name is Sam Dementiff. I was born in Holy Cross in 1939. And my family, my mom and dad started a river freighting business, and which allowed us to travel up and down the Yukon and Tanana, pretty much all the interior rivers during our whole life. So when I was a teenager, I would spend most of my time on the rivers during the summer. And we got to go by the Olin Fish Camp above Ruby, and I remember seeing your parents there, and I do want to say that when I think about the current pandemic that we're in, it's something hard to think about now because it's ongoing. We're living it now. And if we think about it, it's tough. I remember when this started, the first person to die in Alaska was an Alaska Native lady that was a relative and was from our area. And when we heard that, I marked that down in the book. And if that was a couple of years ago, you know? So it's and when you think about it, pandemic is a description about something that's affecting the whole world. And our world, when we think about it, is our community, our family, and the villages, the places we're from. So when I think about Holy Cross, I have to describe Holy Cross because Holy Cross had a mission, meaning it was an orphanage that took in children from pandemics, where they lost either one or two parents, and they were orphans. They had no place to go in the village, wherever it was on the lower Yukon or Kuskokwim, or up along the coast, and they sent them to Holy Cross. So I was a village boy. In our village, we lived down the village, but we went to school up at the mission, and there was hundreds of kids there. When I say hundreds, it's usually around 200 to maybe 300 at the most in the mission. And so, when I'm a village kid and I'm going up to Holy Cross, I didn't realize that these kids were orphans that had one or both parents were gone. I didn't know that. I only realized it later. And so it really made me stop. And it even makes me stop now to think, well, I don't like it when, we're I'm away from my mom and dad, and I live with them. And I think about it now, and I think of those kids, very young kids. The youngest one was 18 months old when that baby was dropped off at Holy Cross. The mission couldn't take care of that baby. They had to bring it to the village so the village could raise it. But anyway, the pandemics does something that is challenges our spirits and our communities and families and stops us in our tracks. That's death. Now, in villages, people didn't die as quick as they did during pandemics and epidemics. But when they did, it was shocking. I remember seeing the elders going around, and at Holy Cross, we had an epidemic coming through Holy Cross. And the kids in the mission were catching this epidemic. And I was probably 3 or 4 years old when this happened. And they were dying so fast that they couldn't bury them. This was winter. Now, when they're dying 2 to 3 a day, you can't bury them. It's frozen. It's winter. What do you do with bodies of loved ones? That's a hard thing to think about, you know. But we have to think about that because the difference, I think, between then and our current epidemic, meaning worldwide, is that back in our time, we told everybody what was going on, and everybody believed it because they could see it. It was truth. There's dead people. There's people suffering and crying. Some people suffering so much they couldn't cry. And it was shocking for us kids to see that. Now, we don't fool around in villages when that happens. We try to do what we can to take care of the kids or the victims. And it's tough. As these kids died in Holy Cross and along the village, they would bring them out, and they had died so fast they just put them outside, covered them with blankets, and there was a priest in Holy Cross Mission that would come down, and he told the people there, don't touch the bodies, don't touch your people, and you'll catch it, and you'll die. So we heard that. The people heard that, and they believed him. They understood he was telling the truth. Now, I have to tell you a moment and just tell you that you have to think about this one word, truth. Truth. That means something. Now, he would come down and he'd pick up those bodies and put them on a sled, Dogsled, and he'd pull them down below the village. Every day he'd be gone all day. He'd come back up, and as he came back up, he had a set of overalls on. And as the summer, the winter, late winter went into spring, started melting. Now, as every day he came down, he was picking these bodies up, and a couple of women in the village went out to help him. They knew he needed help. And so there's a book called Dogsled Apostles. In Dogsled Apostles talks about the missionaries of the Lower Yukon, Kuskokwim, up the river valleys. There's a portion in it that describes this epidemic in Holy Cross and how that Father Lucchese came down, and there's 2 women in the village that came out and helped him. And they would help him load the bodies on the sled and push it down so far, and he would stop them and tell them, don't come any further. And he would take care of the bodies. And so those women would go back to the village and wait. When he came back, he was all covered with blood, everything. And he would take off his overalls and his mitts, and those women would take them and wash them. And the next day he would come down and put them on. And that happened until through the summer, until they were able to, it became under control. That's written up in this book called The Dogsled Apostles. And now I don't remember too much of that. In fact, I don't remember any of that. But my mom and dad would tell us, when the old people, when after that happened, they remembered about how you can spread this sickness and how it could kill people. The old people that we grew up with, they had certain dishes they used. They wouldn't let anybody else use the dishes. They were afraid their germs might be caught by someone else. Don't touch my cup. Don't touch my spoons or anything around me. And I always, when I was growing up, I was wondering, these old people are just really kind of weird, and selfish in a way that they would not anybody touch their. And later on, I realized what they're trying to do. They're trying to protect us. Oh, man. When I realized that, and I realized they were very wise because they knew that this death would spread quickly. And one of the questions you asked, Dewey, was how does this affect us today? Today, you can turn on the news and you'll hear people saying, it's my right. It's my right to not have to wear a mask. I don't have to wear a mask. You can't make me wear a mask. Now, when I hear that, that's wrong. You're infecting other people by thinking you have a right. Well, we all have the right to breathe, but we all have a right to protect each other too. And we have to tell each other the truth. You can't have states in the countries in the world lying to each other. You can't have that. All you do is you extend the pandemic. It just keeps going on, and it changes, and it gets worse and more infected. That's where we are today. So, remember I said think about the word truth? We knew back then, and now you have to tell the truth. So, wear that mask, take the vaccine. I remember, I have to tell you this little side story about the epidemic that took place in Nome in 1920s, the diphtheria epidemic. And it was killing people there. And they had serm in Anchorage. And the only way they can get that serm to Nome is they were thinking about, we can fly it up. They brought it up. They can fly it up. It is in the middle of the winter, and it's 40 and 50 and 60 below zero. They couldn't keep those airplanes flying. And so what they did was they figured out a way to bring it from Anchorage via the train up to Nenana. And from Nenana, they used U.S. mailed dog teams and dog teams from the villages to take a relay thing to go all the way down the Yukon River, down the Tanana first from Nenana, Minto, Tolovana, Manly Hot Springs, Tanana, across Akatanana, all the way down the villages, right past your guide's camp, and all the way to, I think it was Nolado, Caltag, I believe it was, from Old Lady Trail over to Unalakleet, and then right on into Nome. Those men that volunteered were taking it 20 to 30 miles, 40 miles in a couple of instances, in the middle of the winter when it was 55 to 60 below zero, and they transferred that serum all the way through there because they knew this serum works and it will save lives. Now, that's truth. That's honoring other people's health, helping people. So they brought that all the way down to Nome, right in there, and they were able to save. It wasn't a lot of people, it's a few hundred people that were saved, but one person saved, if it is your wife, your children, that's a big thing. That's a big thing. So I'll stop there and let Elizabeth tell us some of her experience, memories.
Doggadin, I appreciate your sharing. Would you like to introduce yourself and share anything?
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Nicktoon Fleagle, and I was born and raised in Alatna, way up the river of Alatna. We never stayed in the village because my mom died when we were so young. We only had our dad to raise us. So it was a good old days, and because we never got sick because we had no contact with other people. But during the pandemic, my older sisters, I came from a big family of 10, and I was the third of the youngest that survived. And me and my other 10, there's only 2 of us, my older sister, Kitty, David, and I left from that big family. But we survived all that because Dad was a good caregiver, and he was at 4th grade educated, and he knew a lot. But my older sisters told me stories of a long ago, and they had some kind of pandemic, and everybody was sick in the village. There was a few of them that could care for them, and they were getting fewer and fewer people because they had no medication or anything, and so not very many people know what else to do with them. So as soon as they pass on, they were so tired of digging graves. So my sisters told me that they just started. It was kind of springtime, and we lived by the river with a deep cut bank. So the able people started just throwing down the bodies down the bank and covering it with the dirt the best they can, because there's not enough of them to care for the ones that were surviving. And so it was so horrible. And then I'm an elder in a program for University of Alaska, Rural Human Services and Social Work. And the UPIC elders come up and they told us how they were going through the same thing at the same year down. It was all over Alaska. Everybody was losing everybody. And so there's about 2 or 3 left that was able to take care of the dead bodies. It was so bad. And I don't think we had medical people then in the villages and like we do now. And during this pandemic, it has lasted 2 years now. So I really encourage anybody who's refusing to get vaccinated, please get vaccinated and get boosted up, because that's what helped me from catching it now. I got a daughter that still go out to the hotel to work as a maid, and she haven't gotten it because she was very careful around the people, wearing her mask and a lot of sanitizing and everything. So far we're okay, but now we just have more help And the vaccination is what really, really is going to help you. Please get vaccinated. Thank you.
Ryanas, thank you for sharing some of that history with us. It seems like our people had to be really strong, and I can't imagine what it was like to be confronted with so much death firsthand like that, where there's so many people passing away that there's not even a way to bury them and go through our ceremonies and take the time to be with them in the way that we would like. And we've seen that a little bit recently. I know our home community has been impacted for sure, and I know several of our tribal members who have passed due to COVID. And oftentimes when that happens, what I've seen growing up is we have a tea and we go over to someone's house and we sit with them and we spend time with them, and we don't even need to say nothing, just be in their presence, maybe have a bite to eat. And now we're being asked to be socially distant and to take the hard step to not be there for someone in that way. Can either of you describe how our communities today, or maybe even an example from another time, where you can show support for someone even if you can't be there with them in person? If either of you would like to share.
I can tell about TB epidemic. It was when I was before I was 20 years old. I went down to my dad's come because the TB was spreading all over the villages, and they were calling out for 18 to 20 some year old people for the training for LPN. That's licensed practical nurse, so we can work with our own people at the hospital. And BIA paid our way down, paid for our schooling. And then we learned to take care of the TB patients that were in a hospital. But we were having to be very careful workers. I was one fortunate student. I gave them 3 years down there, but during the TB thing, when we have a patient, we have to wear a gown, we have to wear a cap, a paper cap, and a mask. We even put a paper stuff over our shoes so we're fully covered before we even get in the room to take care of the patient. And rubber gloves forever. And so we had to give them shots to get them well. We cared for them until we didn't lose too many, but they were also down Maldescom. There was no place to bury them, so they were putting them into I can't remember where, but they had to go retrieve the bodies not too many years back to rebury them where they really belong. And so some of my classmates were a little careless, and they caught a TB, and they had to be our patient till they get well enough also. But we didn't lose too many of the students. One, also we had to go through that, what was that disease that you have to have that iron lung? One of our students got that, and she survived that. And we went through a lot. And I was born in 1935, so you can figure out how old I am right now. I'm so thankful to be alive and still be able to not catch that disease so far. And so, thank you.
Well, from what I remember, is here in Fairbanks. Fairbanks. And in Alaska, they had the polio epidemic that came in, and it was in Anchorage and here in Fairbanks. I remember we were living here, and we either lived here in Fairbanks or in Indiana for 3 years, and we were all born down in Holy Cross. But I remember one of my sisters, there's 10 in our family, and I'm in the middle, and there's 2 boys and 7 girls. One of the girls got polio, and it was, she was put her in hospital, and it really shocked us, our family, and it's realizing that it's hard to believe that she had polio. And they had her there for 15 days, and then she was cleared. And so she had what is called a touch of the polio. And but they had the polio vaccine, the polio serm that they took, and gave that to everybody. Took it because they realized that this is something that will kill people, and it cripples them. And one of the things I remember Holy Cross when I was a kid was we went swimming in the Yukon River in the summertime, and all us kids out on the sandbar, and I'd seen a lot of kids that had these big scars that went from the back of their shoulder blade, back here on the middle of the back, all the way underneath their shoulder blade, all the way up to their chest here. And I remember seeing those scars, and I remember when we first initially seen them, those kids from the village were saying, well, then we've seen some of the village kids have them. What's wrong? What happened to you? They said, I had TB, and they had to look at my lungs, so they had to remove something. And they had so they had these these operations where they would cut open the person so they can get to their lungs. And when you're a kid, that looks terrible. It must have hurt. You say, I don't remember very much, but in about 5 minutes, you're back swimming. We're kids, we're swimming the Yukon River. So, okay, so you got your big scar and you're crippled, and it's the resiliency of kids. And it's the resiliency of people understanding that we cannot drag through life. We have a beautiful country. We have a beautiful way of life. And if you think back, I want you to think about what I'm saying right now. In this Tanana Valley, 11,000 years ago, if you drive up the highway towards Delta, that's going upriver, at Shaw Creek at Delta, archaeologists found a community that lived on that bluff, and it's called Early Morning Sun People. They got the DNA from those 2 young people that they found there, and they were Dina Athabascan people, tied directly to our people here in this valley. Now, if you look at University of Alaska, Trofieta and Chena Bluff, that's where the village of Chena was, across the river where Howard's camp is. That's where the village was. The town of Chena was where the campground is. All the way up and down this valley, people lived happily for 11,000 years. Now, when you ask and you think about how someone asked me, what was your religion back in time? What is your people's religion? Now, Dewey, I want you to think about this. And Elizabeth, what was our religion? When they asked me that, my thought was, We did not have a religion. We had a way of life. But we did have creation stories. We believed and we know there was a God. And I knew of these creation stories because I went to an elders gathering and they talked about God, Demientieff, making the earth, all that's on the earth, and then people, putting them here. So, why is it that we have traditional chiefs of the Tanana Chiefs Conference in this valley that became ministers? Our traditional chiefs, Peter John, David Salmon, Trimble Gilbert today, Anna Frank. Why do all these people become ministers? Because when the ministries, when the church, organized churches, religions came in, they brought the Bible. Now, we had word of mouth about the creation stories and God, but once they brought the Bible in, now you can read it. Now, elders will tell you, we know about the Bible, we know about all these things, and our traditions teach us how to live. But once they got the Bible, then they could see, now we have a written understanding. And we know where this Bible and what happened there came from. It comes from the East. There's a story from a Dot Lake elder that I heard, told us when I was down there during the Angst times when we were doing the village corporations, and I was down there working with the village of Dot Lake, and the elder there was raised by her grandparents, and so it was way back in time. And she said, you may not know this, and Sam, you're from down in the Yukon. You may not know this, but in our village, we had medicine people. Medicine people practice medicine. They could see things in the distance. They can control certain things. Some of them can float in the air. And we all knew it. But they told us, they told the rest of the people in the village, sometime in the near future, there's going to be someone coming from the east. The lady pointed to the border. From the east and down the coast, southeast. A man coming up. He'll be wearing long black robe. And he'll be teaching a big prayer. And the medicine people told us, when this guy come teaching that big prayer, all our power is gone. It'll be gone. She said, so all of a sudden, here comes this guy coming up. Long black robe. He's a minister. And he's teaching us the Bible and the Our Father, the big prayer. Next day, medicine people, that's it. They couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't practice medicine anymore. But how does this relate to pandemic and what we're talking about? I say it because we come from a people that have survived 11,000 years. Factually, we know that. And it goes further. How did we do that? We did it because we lived with respect of the earth and of Demientieff and everything he gives to people, and especially his earth, not our earth. He made it for us. That's God's earth. Come on, I have to just divert for a minute. Along comes the Claims Act, and all of a sudden they're making us own the earth. That's not right. But anyway, we live in this economy, in this country now. But back in time, in those days, living in harmony with nature was a very important thing. And the most important of it is protection of your elders and your youth. Us guys in the middle, we take care of them. We gather them in the village. You know how they gather them in the village? They gather all the people together in the hall. They put the babies and the mothers in the middle, and they put the young ladies and the young kids are further in the middle, and the older guys here, and the aged, and then all of us capable, men and women on the outside, protecting the whole thing. That's our job. Because we know in this layers, those babies are our future. You can talk to any grandma. They'll lay down their life for their kids. So when we see in pandemic things like this disregard for kids, disregard for each other, that's a big insult to a human being, own spirit, and to God, to Dinato. We can't do that. That's why we have these traditional chiefs. They always, I remember Peter John saying, do not lie. Do not lie. Whenever we see anybody that we know or people around us, we hope they tell the truth. Now, when we're running up and down the river and when we're going up to Latna, we're trying to read the waters and everything, the truth is, we go to someone and ask them about where's the sandbars downriver, and they'll tell you. They're telling you the truth. So there it is. Trust and truth. That's how to live. And with respect. So I got to stop right there because I end up preaching.
Good words. I think that gives us some long history, perspective, where we've been, where we're at now. Is there anything that you'd like to share related to that or on a different topic?
I forgot to tell you that my dad ended up with the TB when I was still working as a nurse, and I was his nurse, and and then my younger sister Stella went down and took that training, and then she ended up being his nurse also, and he's just so proud man like that. He was a proud man the way he raised his children. Education was the most important thing after we lost his mother. That's why our language was taken away from us. He wanted us to learn the English language so we can get out there in the world and make something of ourselves. And then he was right, because education also is so important now. But he was a healer also. He used to, when he started getting, he lost his wife when he was only 40-some years old. So he never remarried. And when he's having a hard time dealing with raising a big family all alone, until my older brother Wallace grew up and started helping, and my older sisters. But he used to grab his snowshoes, his rifle, his pack sack. He left off the country, like Sam was saying. God gave us the food for all our use of the country. And it was just like Eden. It was such rich country. And then he always carries a fish hook and line in his cap. That way he can fish hook railings or whatever bites that hook also. He was so resilient that he survived a TB, and just really give praise to the operators. Like Sam was saying, they had to cut part of his lung out and everything. And so it was so wonderful to have our good life. Like David Sam, I work a lot with him before he passed on. He wanted me to learn as much as he can teach me, like Howard Luke. And he said during the really bad pandemic they had, his dad just took him out in the country like our dad did years back, and just stay out there as long as they can until it passed by. That's isolation. That's the best thing, I think, that what during this pandemic, people should never be in big crowds, because that's where it starts spreading. And so now we have a class, and they didn't let me come in. We had it in person, but we had a great big room where everybody was very well masked up and 6 feet apart at least. And so I done my eldership teaching through the iPad. And I told them one day I wanted to go in for half a day and wait to say hi to the students. So they had a shield around me, and I had a mask on and everything, so I didn't even get to eat because they packed up my lunch and took me right home, and they're protecting the elders. And so it's very, very catchy. I saw on Facebook the other day where it just almost make me laugh, because it say that the Omicron is just like a dog chasing you, and once it catch you, that's it. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, that's a little too much about that. They shouldn't get so rash. But then that's kind of a warning too. I hope people listen. It's so contagious out there. We took a trip this fall down to Portland, Oregon. My son lives out of Salem, so we went to visit him, but we were very carefully masked up and everything. And none of us got sick from that trip. So, because you can do what you want to, but you have to be very, very careful. And God protects us if you believe in the higher power, who is God. That belief in that, when he gets sick, he don't need medicine. He just takes off in the country. He'll talk to the person that keeps us well and well supplied with food and everything. So our people didn't need church. Our country was our belief. We believe in somebody bigger than we were, since way back when. They had so much respect. They give thanks every time they kill an animal, and then they share it with other people that can't go out and hunt like the elders or the widows. Dad was very good for the widows because he built them boats so they can feed their families by fishing and stuff. And they do a lot of sewing for him before we were big enough to sew ourselves. So in the days that people just help each other, raise a family, it takes a whole village to make everybody okay. And when I was growing up, we had the best chief. He kept our village so controlled. He kept warning out, if you're old enough to start going with a partner, you just choose one partner and stick with that one until you married him, because he kept a clean village. That way he really talked to us youth and everything. It was very good. I learned a lot growing up, and when Howard Luke had those children down in his spirit camp, I talked to them about that in life, to just be careful and all that stuff. And so it was very good training for all the students too. We're training them the traditional way of life, because they were being raised in the cities. And the fun part was Howard Luke was still alive, and he had fish nets, and he was catching salmon. A lot of the students learned how to cut fish. That was so wonderful days. I wish we can get back again to the fishing, because we need our traditional foods to keep us going in the well-fed, the natural food instead of the store-bought. That's how we were raised. So thank you for having me today.
See, I appreciate you giving some of those examples and that connection that you mentioned across generations with our children and with our elders. That's something that we want to try to keep strong. And I just learned recently how Denakanaga is investing quite a bit in iPads. So having technology be a way to connect us, even if we're at home or in another community or another village, or for those of us who are in town who want to be connected with our precious elders or our loved ones. And from some of what you shared earlier, Mr. Demientieff, you were talking about our ways of life, our values, and the way that we are with each other. Have you seen any examples in recent time, maybe since COVID-19 began, some examples of people living out those values that you would like to highlight or recognize?
Well, I do remember when the implementation of the Alaska Native Claims Settlement came about. And during the implementation, they had a section in the Act that said that each area in the state has to identify cemetery and historical sites. So we read that here in the interior and thinking, well, the Doyon board decided, well, we need to identify these sites and point them out. So they put together a group of elders from around the region, all the different villages around the region, and they met a number of times. And when you get a group of elders like this is a unique situation, because they're from all different parts of the Chiefs Doyon region, which is a big part of the interior of Alaska. And they meet one place, and they say, okay, well, there's a place down here around the bend, and they talk about that cemetery or historical site. And then as they're talking, other people start remembering, oh, yeah, I know, hey, I remember that. And right away, their chairman of that Cemetery and Historical Sites Commission went back to Doyon and said, we're missing out on something vital that's coming out right now, and that is information relating to cemeteries and historical sites, history of our people that has to be documented. And so they decided, okay, well, we need to set up an elders group So what they call it? Tanakanaga. The voice of the people. That's how Tanakanaga came about. But these identification of the cemetery and historical sites is very important. There's very many, and I have to. How much time do we have left?
About 10 minutes. You're free to.
I want to tell you a little story about this epidemic, this pandemic and epidemic. And it relates to these cemetery and historical sites. And I know Elizabeth knows some of these, and so does your mom. You probably know some. Everybody knows a ghost story. But this true story came about from a priest in Holy Cross that was going down through the epidemic touched villages of the lower Yukon and the Kuskokwim. And he was going out, and their people were dying. The reports from the villages from across the way I believe it was on the Kuskokwim side, close to Aniak from Holy Cross. It's just 40 or 50 miles across from the Yukon to the Kuskokwim. People along there were dying real fast. And so the priest decided, well, he's going to go down and see how he can help. So he went down, and he said he couldn't help because whole little small villages were gone. They were dead. All the people, they went in there, and they went on down, and there was just a few people. He said, well, how many people further down? They said, there might be some others, but nobody else is alive. So he went back to Holy Cross. And he said after a few months that he was there in Holy Cross, and his family came up from downriver, from Kuskokwim, came into Holy Cross and said, where's that priest that was trying to help people? And they said, oh, that's him over there. So they go over to him, and they tell him, we're here to thank you. Thank you for sending that priest to come and help us. And the priest said, where are you from? And he said, we're from the downriver villages. He said, we never sent any priest down there. In fact, it was me that went down and came back. We didn't. There's no one else down there. And a man and his wife and his kid, they were walking around there, and they said, wait a minute. Who's that? Who's this? And the priest come over, and he says, there was a statue there, a statue of Francis of Assisi, a saint. And the guy says, that's the guy that came down. He showed up at our village. We were the only ones there, and we're dying. He came in, and he said, I got food for you. Here's some bread. And he gave each one of us bread. And he said, I got for you to drink. He gave them drink. He said, we ate, and we drank from that guy. And after he left, we got well. And that's why we're here. We wanted to thank your man, but that's him. That's a true story written in a book called Holy Cross. So, I know. See, we don't really usually talk about things like that. That's a religion story, But there are true stories like that. I know one from Anvik, and I know others. And I know lots of people know those stories. There are miracles taking place. Why not? We're people of God. We're His children.
Yeah.
When He made creation, last of all, His special creations, people. So what does Yupik mean? Yupik means people. Yupik. Inupiat. What does that mean? The real people. That's what it means. What is Dina? People. We know who we are because God made us, and every single human being on this world is a people. So we don't exclude anybody. Us people, we're all people. And anybody that is not a people, raise your hand. Whenever I go to these conferences and I'm talking to a group of people, I say, anybody that's not a human being, I don't use human beings, I use people. Anybody here that's not a people, raise your hand. Anybody look around? No, I haven't met anybody yet that raised their hand, because they are. God's special creation is people. That's why we have to help each other. And that's why we have to tell the truth to each other. And the Native people, whenever you're traveling around, you got to tell the truth. If you tell a lie, there's the trust. Your trust is broken. I can't go with those guys. I can't trust them. So we build trust in our help, in our encouragement of each other, in our respect for each other, and especially our respect for God's special creations, people, and the rest of creation, which, by the way, is a real good lead into climate change and what's happening to our earth, his earth. So, anyway, that's all I got right now.
Thank you for that. Yes, please share.
I've got little, forgot to tell you this. When I was just a little girl, my grandma told me, because my little fingers stick out, I'll never run out of food. And my dad told me when I was a little girl like that too, he said, when you grow up, you'll be working with all cultures of the world. And I said, how do you know what'll I'd be doing when I grow up? He said, you'll see. And when I had a job at University of Alaska as custodian first, now I go retired from there, and that's where I work with all people from all over the world. And I talk to them about their country, about how they do things, and I get to know all the big scientists and everything because I'm curious about what Dad said. I got to learn from them and then teach them our way also and share what we learn together. And that's how our people were. They pick out a person that they bless, like God's blessing over them, and everything they say what you're going to be doing when you grow up. I'm doing the things. David Salmon saw that in me also. He told me that I'll still be working with a lot of people and share all what I learned from him. And Howard Luke was the same. So I was so blessed to meet the elders before me. And they told me, don't be afraid of technology. That was before we had computers and stuff. And so now I'm using iPad to teach and everything. So everything is just working the way they told me it was going to be. Isn't that something?
And thinking of our viewers on this segment, as we close out here shortly, I'd like to take one more opportunity for each of you to share. And if you wouldn't mind just, thinking directly of those who are viewing this segment on their end, whether they're seeing the recording here in 2022 or in the future, is there anything that you would want to leave them with for them to think about or a message directly to our viewers, and maybe even thinking about our young people?
I think that the most important thing that I can see now is that we all face a pandemic in this world now, and we just as we ignore vaccines and social distancing and everything that the doctors and scientists tell us to do to stop the pandemic from continuing. When we ignore those, we're just going to it's going to keep changing. Who knows how long? This might be the new way we are going to live. In fact, some people are saying it's the new normal. But the other thing that really concerns me as a native, reflecting on the thousands of years that we have lived successfully in this Tanana Valley, in this whole state, in the world. And the native people of Alaska are certainly not the only people in the world. We're a little small portion of people of the whole world. And we have, if you drive down Cushman Street here to the end and down there, and you look off to the left down there, you'll see a big mountain that was never there 30 years ago. It's there now. I call it Mount Fairbanks, It's the big dump pile. And that's just Fairbanks. Look, think of the world. Now, I say this because here in Fairbanks, we have a trouble with our air quality. And it's because of where we are in this valley. And as the climate changes, we're exasperating it. We're making it worse. And so we have to figure out. And as an older person, I encourage young people to think of ways that we can do things that stops pollution and begins to help the earth recover. Because of all the billions of people that have lived on the earth and are dead, and where are they? They're back in the earth where they came from. Their bodies will do the same thing. We'll end up there. But we have to do whatever we can. It's not a popular thing to say, well, we need the dividend. Here in Alaska, we need the permanent fund dividend. We need more fuel. We need to do this and we need to do that. No, we don't. We have lived 11,000 years, and we just have to use our head, like you say, like your grandpa said about learning from people around. We have to do whatever we can. And we can do it. People can do it. He's got these guys trying to fly to Mars and the moon. Well, hell, they can do things like that. They certainly can help us figure out how to stop using oil and coal. And by the way, this thing up at our university, where they are burning clean coal. I don't know. I can't believe it that the state of Alaska swallowed that one where it's clean coal. Coal is not clean. Coal is the dirtiest fuel you can use, and we're pumping it into the atmosphere every day. But I'll stop right there and just say that the positive note is we can do this. We will do it because elders have said that times like this will pass. And there is more elder stories about the future. So ask an elder about the future and they'll tell you. And some of it is glum. It's not good, but after that, it is good because the elder stories go beyond this trouble.
Well, all your youth out there, just get yourself educated. That's one thing that I learned since I was young. Either in your own culture or in the outside world like we are living right now with this high technology, you keep up with the high tech and everything, and just learn both ways of life wherever you were from, and respect your elders, respect your parents, and respect and love each other. That's the words I used to give to the students we work with at the spirit camp. So I'm just giving you advice the same way. Learn as much as you can from all cultures also. And just respect each other and love each other. And I leave you with that. I love you all.
Nabasi, thank you so much to both of you as our special guests for sharing this segment about resiliency through pandemics. I think that there's many places you took us on this journey, and I just want to say Nabasi and Adoya Nigalach Tanik. May everyone take good care of themselves. Isi Kada.